Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the American Enterprise Institute. My name is Robert Doar, and I am the Morgridge Fellow in Poverty Studies here at AEI. And I'm very pleased to welcome you to this important discussion of our nation's anti-poverty programs. For some time now, the leadership of AEI has felt that greater attention needs to be paid to helping those at the bottom of the economic scale move up and out of poverty. There is a deep frustration that despite the fact that we do a lot as a country to improve the material well-being of struggling Americans, we are not helping them achieve a station in life where they no longer are in need of ongoing government support. This frustration, I know, is felt in a lot of places, at the White House, in academia, and other think tanks, in neighborhoods and communities around the nation, and in Congress. And to offer some ideas on how we can move forward, the Republican Study Committee of the House of Representatives earlier this summer produced this report, Strengthening Our Safety Net to Empower People, which will be the topic of today's seminar. And we are very pleased to have three members of the House here today to talk about their report and to hear reactions from two notable experts on these programs. But first, and perhaps most importantly, we are going to start outside of Washington and hear from experts in the field of helping low-income Americans move up. They work in places far removed from the halls of Congress, but their work has informed some of the ideas contained in the steering committee's report. I have a special affinity for these outside of Washington experts because that is where I worked prior to coming to Washington. I spent 19 years working in social services agencies in the state and city of New York, and I have some idea of the dedication, heart, and wisdom of people who work in these programs, and I always love to be among them. So I'm very pleased to welcome and introduce to you our first panel, which feature three leaders of community-based organization. First up will be Odell Cleveland, who is currently the Chief Administrative Officer for Mount Zion Baptist Church of Greensboro, North Carolina. He was the president, CEO, and co-founder of the Welfare Reform Liaison Project in Greensboro, which began in 1997 as a ministry of Mount Zion and became the nation's first faith-based community action agency. He has developed a broad range of partnerships at a national, state, and local levels, including with the White House Office of Faith-Based and Neighborhood Partnerships, the North Carolina AARP, and the North Carolina Medical Society Foundation. Odell, we're glad to have you. But don't start yet because I'm going to introduce Roberta as well. And Dean. Roberta Keller is the director of the Chautauqua Opportunities, an anti-poverty agency headquartered in Dunkirk, New York. As director, she works to foster economic development opportunities for low-income individuals to help them gain economic independence. Chautauqua Opportunities has been awarded several distinctions since she has been director, including the Department of Housing and Urban Development Home Ownership Award, Best Practices Agency status by the State Department and the New York State Community Action Association Technology Award. In 1999, Ms. Keller was awarded the Most Visionary Director Award by the New York State Child Care Coordinating Council, a council I at one point was a member of, so I'm particularly happy to have you, Roberta, and she received the New York State Senate's Women of Distinction Award in 2005. Dean Hammond, our third participant, has worked in low-income and homeless housing for more than 30 years, including founding a company focused on HUD housing management software. He joined the board of the Foundation for Affordable Housing in 2004, served as its chairman, and was contracted to act as president before stepping down in 2012. He's now a consultant to the board. Dean is a retired Army major and was awarded the Purple Heart and Distinguished Flying Cross during the Vietnam War, and the Defense Meritorious Service Medal as Chief of Aviation of a military training mission in Saudi Arabia. After these three presentations, we will have the congressman come up and present on sections of the report, and then we will have Professor Harry Holzer and Dr. Angela Rashidi come and make comment on the report. And during parts of this and at different times, we hope to have a good dialogue with the audience as well with questions. I have one other person to introduce, and she's here somewhere, and that's Nicole Noyes, who works for AI, and she's the timekeeper. She's over there, and she'll be giving signs so that we can keep everybody on schedule. I'm sorry to say that, but that's part of what happens when you are trying to run a well-run seminar. And I want to say one last thing about seminars, because Roberta is from Chautauqua County. Some of you may know the Chautauqua Institute is one of the earliest sort of institute of good thinking and sharing of ideas in the United States. And when President Johnson was president and he would get frustrated with things, he'd say, oh, we're going to have one of these gold darn Chautauqua seminars. That didn't get the laugh I was hoping for, but that's okay. But the point is, this is something like that. We want to have a free and open discussion, and with that, I'll start with Odell. Thank you very much.
Good. Just want to say thank you all for coming. It's interesting when they talk about the time, everyone looks at the Baptist preacher and said, okay, that's what we need to keep the time for. You know, we got, first, just glad that this discussion is on the table in a form that goes on both sides of the aisle. When I read the book, A Conservative Heart, and I look at the other reports, it's very interesting because 20 years ago when I got into this business, I was in divinity school and I was doing my master's thesis when the 1996 Welfare Reform Act came out. And the thesis was the Black church's response to the 1996 Welfare Reform Act. And in that piece of paper, we talked about how can we do this, and then 10, 15 years later, we were able to move folks off of the welfare rolls to the point that they had about $11 million in earnings. What we didn't do a good job of is to document how much saved us from if Odell was on the system. You know, when you look at that number line, the zero, when we start looking at the negative part, how much savings did it come to the bottom line? But when you start looking at the human impact in folks' lives, how all of a sudden people start feeling good about themselves because they were working. All of a sudden they were being successful. All of a sudden you had the faith community, and in particular in the Black community, the faith community that so many people believe in is on the front lines on helping people, giving them a hand up, not a handout, and being the cheerleader and helping and going into the community, helping business owners say, hey, listen, you don't have to go halfway around the world on a mission trip. I have a mission for you right around the corner. Come on, exercise your faith and get involved, and let's help create jobs. Let's help with all these kind of things. And that's how we became so successful. But as to understand, though, one of the things that we did is the fact that people who didn't want help, we left them alone. You cannot make somebody want to change. And I think in part of the discussion when I read the papers, it's a lot of it you're going to make someone or encourage someone to get married, or someone who's been married for 31 years, who loved my wife, who my nose is wide open and all that good stuff. That's for the young guys in the group. You know, you have to want to be married. No form of legislation is going to make someone get married. But I was so disappointed when I read that the current administration took the work requirements out. The work requirements must be put back in, and it must stay in because that's a big driver that helps make all this work. Because if you're asking the social workers in the DSS systems, Department of Social Service, that's what we refer to it in North Carolina, systems to be job developers, that's not going to work. That's not their forte. So when they partner with us, usually they give you the hardest to serve because no one's, you know, people understand the game. They usually give the faith community the hardest to serve. How are you going to get this person employed, Odell? And that's when we do our miracles. No hocus pocus, just going, building relationships with business owners, getting them to buy in and making a success. And when you get through having them buy in, you go back to the individual and you get him or her to buy in. So believe it or not, the Baptist preacher is going to push the time on because I look forward to the discussion. And I'm just so excited that we're having this conversation because in spite of people's biases, prejudice, and stereotypes about poor people, especially poor Black people who look like me, a lot of your stereotypes are not accurate. And my purpose here today, along with others, is to make you wrestle with your stereotypes. We can show success. We can show that people want a hand up, not a handout, but also part of the system. A lot of the problem is systemic, and I'll end with this. Some people have seen the safety net, which is a metaphor for our social programs, and they turn it into a hammock. Some people see poverty as a pillow, And yes, maybe it has some lumps in it, but you can get used to a lumpy pillow. But you stay in the safety net or the hammock long enough, and that what was there to protect you end up ensnaring you, entrapping you, entangling you with life issues. And when you get ready to move, you can't move. It's a problem. So it's systemic. And a lot of the problem is us. We look for the enemy, and the enemy was us. We put things in place where Odell didn't have to work. You don't have to do anything, Odell, so if I don't have to do anything. For some of us, I'm not going to do anything. And now we blame us for what we created. I know it's no amens, but I'm going to push it to the next person. Thank you.
Amen.
Thank you. My name is Roberta Keller. I'm the director of a community action agency. We're an anti-poverty agency, and our mission is to assist people who are living in poverty, prevent people who are vulnerable to falling into poverty from getting into poverty, create economic opportunities for the community to get out of poverty, and to discover in our local community exactly what it is that is causing or assisting people to slide down economically into vulnerable economic situations. In our agency, we work holistically with the people that we serve, meaning we know that when you fall into poverty and you have a problem, it affects all parts of your life. So we're not there just to deal with your children or just to deal with your housing or just to deal with your health. We deal with all of it. When you come, you'll be risk assessed across 26 life domains. Based on that risk, we'll find out all the services you're eligible for, but we will measure you against a Roma-based continuum of care. That continuum of care tracks you from crisis to economic security. Our goal, of course, is for everybody to be self-sufficient, to reach the middle of that continuum. But our hope for everybody is that they move toward economic security. And in 2008, I think it was validation of our process that those among us who considered ourselves secure found we weren't quite as economically secure as we thought we were. So we are teaching sound financial principles. We are training people to be responsible, to take responsibility in their lives. We use our services, and we are an umbrella agency that covers all ranges of services. We're a community action agency, a community development corporation, a community development financial institution, a licensed home care agency, child care resource and referral agency. There's many, many titles, agencies, that allow us to do a whole plethora of services for people and assist people to develop their own plan toward economic security. What our continuum does is it shows people where they are. For most people who are living in poverty, they've been in generational poverty. They don't realize where they are. They don't realize where they can be. We don't take somebody who's homeless and talk about home ownership. We take people from where they are and we look at the next rung along the continuum. And that's something they can relate to, and they can understand the collateral cost of where they are today. So incrementally, they make that progress. They make short and long-term plans, and we assist them along that continuum. We track and measure those outcomes. We've been doing this for about 20 years. We're an evidence-based agency, and it works.
Thank you, Roberta. Well, Phil Gray, the current president of the Foundation for Affordable Housing, and I'd like to thank AEI and the Congressman for having us here to discuss this very important topic. And we all are part of this topic, and we have to find solutions for these problems. The Foundation for Affordable Housing has been in the homeless housing business for 22 years. And I'm going to focus it right down onto that and talk about a model that we've talked about and support. And Roberta brought up several of those areas of those kinds of support agencies that we use. But in any case, we built in 1994 a 100-unit SRO facility to house homeless. And we came to find out that many of them fall into a couple of categories, especially those who are on some sort of disability or welfare payments, where they have about an average of $815 a month to live, and that's not going to change. And we've been housing them, thousands of them, through the years at St. James Place in those apartments. They pay the home fund set rent of $360 a month. And that's more than 30% of their income, so we're going away from that model considerably. But they have a safe, clean, affordable place to live, and they can continue to live there safely, and some of them, it's the last place they will ever live. In 2005, we constructed the Veterans Wing. That's a 38-unit SRO facility. It was funded by a VA grant, some tax credits, debt, and home funds. And we used that with a support-intensive transitional housing program supported by the Veterans Administration Grant Per Diem program. And we have men and women in the program, and they can be in that program a maximum of 24 months, and that's part of this model. I realize some have labeled transitional housing as a barrier to housing, and that's not the case at all. We found that if you give someone opportunity and provide the right tools and incentive, that they can develop into a good citizen and move on. And what our target is unsubsidized housing, permanent unsubsidized housing. And certainly they can continue on up the ladder, just as Roberta talked about. The supportive model we use for the veterans is the one I'm going to talk about today. And I'll be referencing some evidence-based statistics associated with this program over the last 43 months. Now, whenever we speak of a model like this, where we're trying to figure out a way to turn a life around before it goes completely bad, we're looking for some checklists to use in the objective. Stable housing, good environment, sustained recovery from addiction, permanent work, training and education, two different things, stable finances. And when we look at these models, what do we find in there all the time? Structure. It's always structure, and that's the big key factor is structure. These folks lack structure. And if we look at special schools, they get uniform structure, special programs. The military, same thing. You see structure in there. Prisons, unfortunately, there's plenty of structure in there, and sometimes they go back to that. And family, structure, again. So we have to create an environment where they can create their own structure. Now, it's mostly about we're going to treat you like a good citizen until you are one. And it's not a one-size-fits-all. We have to look for the person. We're looking for a specific client. He or she may be homeless, may be in drug court, may never have been to jail. They may have been to jail, probably has an addiction, and has no structure there. Now, here's the fork in the road for America. Here's the decision. We can enroll this individual ultimately in the course offered by the University of Incarceration, where he or she can learn new skills, have access to drugs, meet influential people, have exciting bed checks, still not pay their child support, graduate with a degree in recidivism, go back to the life and environment where they left, and return to prison within 3 years, 68%, within 3 years, or 5 years, 77%. And 84% of inmates, 24 or younger, will be back in jail within 5 years. And there'll be no family reconciliation there either. Or we can enroll this individual in what we call the course of study offered by the University of Addiction Life Recovery. Now, this is oriented to the addiction as well, where he or she can learn new skills, of course, targeted job training or job seeking, have room inspections, meet influential people, be drug and alcohol tested often, complete Dave Ramsey's Financial Peace University, learn to dress appropriately, have a resume, increase self-awareness, and a key component, one of our key components, participate in a mandatory savings program. We're going to help you get a job, but you're going to do savings. And that mandatory savings program is kind of monitored or adjusted for the HUD way, 30% of their adjusted gross income. Instead of going to rent at first, it will go to savings. Our veterans saved an average of $2,200 per veteran. 94 clients over the last 43 months have saved $206,885. These are homeless, penniless people that come to us. 124 have participated and saved $259,982, $250,000. Continuing, be up to date on agreed child support, build a habit of paying rent, starting in the second quarter of the program. Do not go back to the life environment they left. Move into permanent housing. Move into permanent housing, 86.4%. That's our percentage right now. Move into permanent non-subsidized housing, 74%. And possibly family reconciliation, that works out sometimes. Now remember, these clients came to us homeless and penniless. Now let's talk about the money. Let's do a comparison. University of Incarceration, federal prison, the average in 2014, $30,619. State prison in New York, $60,000. City of New York jail, okay, $167,731 a year. We should just put them in the Waldorf. I mean, it's just way money. And so the University of Addiction Life Recovery, $22,900 a year. So I ask you, which one's better, 30,000 or 23 or 167,023? Listen to 3 news bulletins. I'll give you one here. Marie, 48 years old, white female, served 3 to 10-year drug sentence, shock probation to Veterans of Court. In our program, 15 months, is working part-time, 3 jobs, saved $2,850, and because of that, she got a match from another program for $2,000, paid cash for her car and her furniture. She says, I will not be returning to prison and working toward reuniting with her daughter. So, this is not a giveaway. This is a program where you have to work to what you're doing in the program. 8% probably won't make it. 92% can really change their lives. 86% can be in stable life condition, and 72% can be in a permanent place with a permanent job. This is the reality of rebuilding a life. Thanks.
Can I say one thing?
Yes, of course.
I think you'll see that all practitioners that have been successful, as you have discovered that it takes comprehensive, and we have the same approach with our customers. But the issue is the funding for anti-poverty programs do not follow this approach. And it takes an organization to step back from a contract and say, we have a model and we will find the money and use the money to follow our model, we won't be an agency that implements a contract. Government contracts,
Great point.
the anti-poverty programs that exist in this country are not designed at all in any of the ways you've heard the 3 of us talk about. And they are not in any way measuring success or breeding success. There's not one government contract that I operate that requires an outcome. And I operate $17 million worth of government contracts, and none of them require one outcome. So I have taken those contracts and put them on the side burner and used them as tools and bent them like Beckham in order to make us work and help people change their lives and apply them when they're appropriate. For example, and I'll just use 2 very brief examples, if I can. Section 8 housing, subsidized housing, is an extremely useful tool if you don't tell somebody that they can have it for the rest of their lives, which they can, but you don't tell them that. And you use it at the right time, in the right way, and you structure it the way it was designed to be originally, but has become a crutch that allows people to just live in poverty forever, as you said. And the other is HEAP, Energy Assistance, which we go to great lengths as an agency to help people develop sound financial practices and to establish good credit. And many seniors who have fallen into hard times since 2008 and they're on fixed incomes are going for energy assistance for the first time in their lives. And they're applying, and in order to get in New York State the full energy assistance, which isn't going to carry you through a winter anyway, you're going to have to default on your bill. And in order to default, you're going to ruin your credit. And when they default, the energy company comes and shuts them off and charges everybody a shut-off fee. Energy companies don't lose money. They go to the Public Commission and say, we lost money last year, so we're going to raise our rates. So the taxpayer is paying for the subsidy for the person who's on energy assistance, who's now defaulting to get the full benefit, and that's costing the taxpayer more money because their rates are going to go up because the utility companies are paying more money. All you have to do is pay the utility company to give eligible customers a subsidized energy rate and cut out 10 layers of bureaucracy. and stop putting people into default. This is just small examples of every anti-poverty program that exists. Every single one of them is flawed and needs to be reworked and needs to work together. But they're all operating in government silos, and it takes an organization who operates either many kinds of housing programs or many kinds of anti-poverty programs to be able to step back and take that approach.
Okay, that was a great, great beginning, and as I think we'll transition now, I'll make a few comments on what I heard as we get the congressman to come up. But it seemed to me that we heard about work requirements, we heard about coordination among programs, serving the whole person as opposed to just one aspect of the person. We heard about the federal role. There is no, it seemed to me that it's clear that there is a federal role in helping low-income Americans, and that people on the front lines recognize that, providing resources and money and assistance. And then finally, we heard about local control, the ability of localities and local leaders to structure their programs the way they want. And then I also think I heard from the three of you, and we're going to come back to these issues, is a willingness to accept evidence and outcome measurements to hold you accountable for how well you do.